네, 안녕하십니까. 네, 저는 미리암입니다. 잠비아에서 왔어요. 오늘 프레젠테이션으로 영어로 할게요. 괜찮습니까? 네, 그리고 죄송합니다. Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and any distinguished guests. My name is Mirriam, and I'm very glad that you came out, and I want to thank you for coming out to come and listen to my talk, which is very simple, and I'm going to talk about African perspective towards Africa. How do we as Africans feel about Africa? So today's talk, today's talk wouldn't be profound without starting by quoting what a renowned professor, Professor Kofi Onyodo, he's from Ghana. He's really renowned, and he says, a people denied the ability to name themselves, their own experiences, in a language native to their souls, their secret selves, is a people degraded to the state of shadows of other selves, a people in danger of annihilation. I think with the course of the lecture, you'll be able to understand why I quote this, but basically my lecture hinges on two basic points, which are a misconception and perception. So what's a misconception? A misconception is a mistaken thought or idea, a notion, a misunderstanding. And to illustrate what I mean in relation to Africa, I like to use this tale. I think everybody knows this, the tale of the 6 blind men and an elephant. So each one of them was very sure that the elephant was what he felt, what he described. And this is what Africa is. Africa is big, and people have different parts of experiences, and they believe that's true. But whether that is true, I'll leave that for you to decide at the end of this lecture. And then coupled with this is a perception. A perception is basically your mental view, your outlook towards something. And with this, I would best illustrate it this way. I think everybody knows this. I borrowed this from here. You know, the frog in a well. I mean, the frog was convinced this is paradise. This is the biggest place ever. But the turtle over there comes over and says, hey, there's a bigger world out there. So I'll leave that to you to decide for yourselves which part you stand with relation to Africa. Right, so I don't think I have to say much about how Africa is portrayed. The previous speaker, I'm Zambian, she showed you a lot of pictures from there, but anyway. So these are general pictures we have of Africa. We don't say we don't appreciate what people do, but we do appreciate. Unfortunately, he's late, but you can see the kids in the background with torn clothes, happy though. International organizations, how do they portray Africa? I think posters everywhere. If you go in the subway, university cafeteria when you're trying to have your meal, these are the pictures you see about what's happening in Africa. Kids asking for food. Is it dangerous? Everybody knows about this story, what happened. I think it was sometime like, was it last year or the year before? But anyway, the Somali pirates. So that portrays a picture of how dangerous a place it is in Africa. And then there was this was one of the best documentaries I've ever seen about Africa, actually. Very educative, very informative. It was really detailed. Tears of Africa, showing us all different cultures, including cultures I didn't know existed in Africa. I learned them from here in Korea. So that was a very good picture. But anyway, again, portraying a certain picture of Africa. This picture. This is a famous program. I know my son loves it too. He can't wait for it to see what's new there. But anyway, you know it. I think this was from the Himbi people in Namibia. And you know, no clothes. That's their culture. There's a reason why they're like that. But this is the picture that goes out like, this is what Africa is. What about famous magazines, Time magazines? Even as far back as in the 1920s, you can see Africa political jungle, you know, with all the animals. So this is the picture of Africa. You can't think about Africa without animals or people in anguish, people who are suffering, such that it's difficult to see even when magazines are talking about fashion or leadership, because they're obscured, but these are the pictures. CNN, very up to date, telling us about conflicts, where they're going on. And Africa is not exception. So what about Hollywood? Maybe Hollywood can tell us a magical, happy story about Africa. I'm afraid not. The same theme resonates. Blood, diamond. It's not like a precious diamond, but anyway, blood, diamond, and it's telling us about the wars and everything behind that. So I do not deny what those stories are saying about Africa, because it's true, okay? It's true, it does exist, but this is Adichie, and she talks about the danger of a single story, looking at things just from a single perspective. So I would like to share with you another part of Africa that we as Africans see. Let's go through a few general misconceptions. I would like to cover everything, but I don't have enough time, so I'll just try to show you a few. First one, Africa is a country. I don't know how many of you would be happy if someone pointed at the map of Japan and said, this is Korea. I don't know how many of you would be so happy about that. But anyway, so this is what comes out. Oh, you're from Africa. Do you speak African? So is Africa, is Africa one country? I'm afraid not. We have 54 independent states, different cultures, different languages. I think even the previous speaker showed you some music clip with the Zambian picture. I couldn't understand that language because that's Swahili, which is not in Zambia. So that just shows you how it is. And Africa is a dangerous place. It's really dangerous. But when you go to Africa, you find the warmest people with the warmest smiles. They're very welcoming. There are places where it's safe. Even if you had to leave something, people would still bring it up to you because they're that honest. I'm not saying everywhere, but this you also find. This is a different side of the story. What about the notion that Africa is poor and please let's give money all the time to Africa in general? I'd like to take a look at the map of world resources. Let's look at gold. Everybody knows how important gold is. Is there any gold in Africa? Yes, there is. What about copper? Yes, there is. And if you look at Zambia, where I come from, we have the richest deposits. And even the town that the previous speaker talked about, there's lots of mines there. I'm sure she saw that. What about girls' best friends? Diamonds. Well, we have the best friends there. There's lots of diamonds, just as the movie showed, lots of diamonds in Africa. So, oil? Oh yes, we do have oil reserves in Africa, natural gas. Others are still coming up, even off the shores. And so is it fair to say that Africa is poor? I don't think so as an African. In a nutshell, Africa is rich. But Africa is being looted. I don't know whether it's by ourselves or other people, but all these resources are coming out of Africa. I'm not going to speak about this today because I'm not here to speak about that. But anyway, how we feel about Africa, we feel it's a rich continent with so many resources. Another misconception is that as soon as you come out of the airplane, you'll be able to see a tiger or a lion zoom past you. We've seen tourists right from the airport. Camera is ready to catch an elephant or lion. I'm afraid not. We have game reserves or parks where our wild animals are kept. Otherwise, there'll be no person in Africa because the lions would have eaten everybody. So the animals are kept in reserves. Me too. I'm scared of malaria. I'm scared of AIDS. It's there. It exists. But how can we combat it? That's the thing, because you can control malaria if you have different water resources. AIDS, the levels are declining right now. It does exist. It's dangerous, yes, but it doesn't mean by you breathing African air, you're going to catch it. No, that's not the way it works. Africa is technologically backwards. It's true, we are backwards, but that doesn't mean we have no form of technology. We don't know what a cell phone is, or what a plane is, or what a phone is. I've I've had people ask me, how do you contact people back home? So sometimes I joke and say, you know, I just look at the sun and pray, oh, mom, I hope you're okay. And then my mom listens. People believe that here in Korea. But anyways, okay, besides that, anyway, we have some form of technology, not as advanced as here, but there is some form of technology that we have. Maasai people, herders, they have mobile phones. Of course, as I was saying, technologically backwards, yes, we have our resources, but the technology of how to bring them out is still backwards. Okay. And it's always hot in Africa. Okay, yes, I'm wearing boots. I feel a little bit colder than everybody else, but that doesn't mean it's hot throughout. We have pleasant weather. In fact, the hottest place in the world is not in Africa. It's in the United States. I think Death Valley in California, but people still believe, oh my God, it's Africa, but no, it's not. And I think everybody looked at me and you've answered that question. I'll be the last person to run out of this room. I can't run. It's not everybody that can run. I've seen bus drivers trying me. They park their bus over thinking I'm going to run, but I can't run. Anyway, not everybody can run in Africa. So what's this difference in perception towards Africa? You know, like how come I feel different about it? I'd like to compare it with Korea very briefly with what I know. We embrace difference as compared to Korea, which emphasizes purity. And with that, I mean motherland versus grandfatherland. I think you can understand that expression better than I can. I won't go deep into that. So that's a difference in perception. And because of that, when I look at Africa, I see people, I see relations, I see Ubuntu, I see home. So that's why I feel different about Africa. So the way I look at it, the perception towards Africa is different from the way perhaps everybody else looks at it. So we see people in Africa, lots of warmth, as you can see our colors, the sun, it's very warm. That's how I feel towards Africa. And because of this embracing of differences, we're able to pass through so many barriers. This is Dr. Guy Scott, who's the vice president in my home country in Zambia. These are our former colonial masters. I mean, he's British. Zambia was colonized by the British, but here we are. We have him as vice president. So it shows you how far we go in embracing differences. Besides him, how do others who've been there, who've lived and experienced Ubuntu feel about Africa? Let's take a look at a few. This is Dr. Albie Sachs. He is Jewish in origin. He was in South Africa and worked very hard to fight off apartheid. But even when he was in exile in England, he was able to say that while I was in exile in England, I was unhappy, even when I was happy. But while I lived in Mozambique, which is in Africa, I was happy even when I was unhappy. Why? Because of the relations around. When you're in England, you're happy as an individual. When you're in Africa and you're unhappy with others around you, so you feel happy. So that's the difference about Ubuntu and these relations. The Secretary of State of the United States, Hillary Clinton, after she toured Africa, that was last year, she came to recognize that often the news is dominated by what is wrong with Africa. There are some things which are right. So she found some things that are right about it. This is Dambisa Moyo. I think everybody knows who talks about aid. She says aid is dead in Africa. And the reason why she says that is because she believes all the resources are there. We don't need anything, but if we could just change our policies. So we have people who think differently about Africa. We can do it. So she's one of those people who's hopeful about it. And of course, I'd like to coin that. You know, the sky is the sky wherever you go, and people are people. So Africans are not wrong persons. Just accept them as they are. We are different because of this Ubuntu we have in us. And we do not wish, nobody wishes for Africa to become Asia, Korea, or like the United States, which is why I say a people who's denied the ability to express themselves can start existing as shadows of others. So we'd like to exist ourselves as Africans with everything that is around us. what Africa needs is just its culture explained and respected as we have accepted and respected other cultures. You can go to Africa and be a Muslim, people respect you for that. You can go to Africa and take your culture or your religion with you, people will accept that and respect it. They won't force you to change it or question you why you're like that. So this, people also outside here, especially like in Korea, should be able to accept this. And to show that this is a market in Africa, right? And this is a market in Korea. I don't think anybody has to start justifying, you know, this market in Korea is special because of something, just as I can't explaining why the other market is special in a different way. So a market is just a market. People are just people, the sky is just the sky. Decontextualize all the walls and see things as they are in perspective. And as a way forward, I'm just convinced, like everybody else, just as we have very smart people here in Asia, we have smart people in Africa, and we can still take our continent to the next level. Renowned figures like, you know, we have 2 female presidents in Africa from Malawi and Sierra Leone. Watai, Nobel Prize winner, though she's late, she died, very sad. Kofi Annan and Nelson Mandela, I do not need to speak much. Everybody knows about them. And Afropreneurs like Abielo there, and he's saying that in recent years, we can see a new wave of young men and women who have access to all these global networks, and these are Africans. So with their experiences, these are the people who can link Africa to the whole world through these global linkages, and these are what we'd like to call Afropreneurs, taking Africa to the next level. So, as a way of policy recommendation, how should we go about it here in Korea? I believe we should allow a forum like this one, whereby we have to have mutual exchange of ideas, and we'll be able to explain why certain pictures and, you know, why certain things happen in a certain way in Africa, provide Africans with a space to exist, and not really like force them to bend in a different way. Take Africa to the classroom. Simple, basic facts, like Africa is not a country, is really important, so that students can be able to ask, which African country are you from? Instead of just pointing at you and, oh, Africa Saram on the street. Because when you go to Asia, nobody's going to say Asia Saram, they're going to say Japan Saram or Chinese Saram or something like that. So it's very, very different. So take Africa to the classroom, please. And then it would be nice to create a global knowledge structure where we can be able to link local knowledge to the global knowledge, because I don't think Africa would go through the steps that Korea has taken to jump and be at this stage, but that instead, why not understand the local knowledge as it is and just link it to the global structures. And then finally, the last but not least, I would like to say that the lizard that jumped from the high Iroko tree to the ground said he would praise himself if no one else did. I believe as an African, Africa as a continent as a whole, whether today, yesterday, tomorrow, we're really proud of ourselves. We've really come a long way, and we're still going to take giant steps as we go forward in the future. And at that point, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say thank you very much. 감사합니다.